What's submission to you?
Bowing. By the way, Brian, sorry to interrupt. When I went home last week, my entire family bowed to me when I walked in the door.
Even the wife?
Everybody.
Yeah. Did you like it? Or?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, see, it's good. Basically,
I think that's a joke, right?
No, it's an actual. Yeah, they did it. Well, it's like a meme. They did it as a meme, but it was just funny.
Mormons have an oath of perfect obedience. So
I'm just curious, though, because I know it's different for everyone, submission. You know?
Yeah, willful cooperation.
I was making a Mormon.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, basically just deferring to his leadership, willful cooperation. So, yeah, deferring to his leadership. Now, for example, like I don't think submission is this. Your husband says jump off a bridge, and then you jump off a bridge. That's not. You would not be in contravention of being submissive if you're like, no, I'm not going to jump off a bridge. Or if your husband said, okay, sell these drugs or be a prostitute.
I would never be around someone like that.
What's that?
I would never be around someone like that. So.
But let me ask you this. Your husband says, well, let's say it's your boyfriend. Your boyfriend says, when we get married, you're taking my last name. Well, first off, let me ask, would you take your husband's last name?
No.
What about...
okay, now we're getting somewhere. So you wouldn't take his last name?
No.
Just to be clear, you want to get married though, right?
Eventually, yes.
Question for you. If it's the perfect guy, he's the perfect guy. Most of us won't get the perfect partner ever. Would you take his last name then?
I still think that's a no.
So, question for you: would you hyphenate? Are you going to hyphenate, or are you going to keep your last name?
I'd be open to it. That sounds like a compromise.
What if he's a billionaire?
No.
But he can help your career.
What if bro, you wouldn't take any man's name?
I just said I would be open to hyphenating.
Can I ask you
What
a
about
question?
your father's last name?
Well, that was by.
Let me ask you a question on a couple questions on this. So you said you're old school and traditional.
In certain aspects, not all.
Okay, so you're picking and choosing. It's like it's a buffet. You get to pick and choose. Oh, I like this. Don't like that. Well, okay, there's some criticisms there, but so okay, you're picking and choosing. So, what do you consider traditional or modern? Hyphenation, or like how do you categorize these? Hyphenation,
yeah, that definitely.
Or what's traditional?
That would be definitely like if I was to not take his last name, that's not traditional. I can agree with that.
Okay, cool. How about this? I'm trying to think of another example here.
Would it be icky if he demanded to take your last name? He just demanded it.
I would say yeah, because that's just why do I have to do something out of demanding? Like
Quite a couple questions for you. Do you want guys to pay for? I might have been gone when you guys talked about this. You want a guy to pay for first dates?
They don't have to, but if they do, that's a great look.
It's a plus. Do you want a guy who's a protector?
Yeah.
You want a guy who's a provider?
Yes, if you can.
You want a guy who's a leader?
Yes.
Okay. When it comes to the protection component, would you have an expectation, even on the first date or deeper into the relationship, that if you guys are walking along the sidewalk, that the guy is walking closer to the road where the cars are?
That's being a protector.
Protector. And would you expect this on the first date?
I would notice if he doesn't. So
okay,
yes.
But it would be something you'd want in a relationship.
Yeah, of course.
And then you'd want him to protect you in other circumstances.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to be clear, you want old school. Do you want the guy to be old school and traditional in all the ways that men are typically old school and traditional?
I guess so.
Well, in the way that benefits
Total double
her.
standard.
In the ways that benefits her. Right. And so just to be clear though, so you want a guy to essentially be willing to die for you, but you won't take his last name?
I think die for me. That's like I never said that.
But
I
isn't
said
that
he's protecting you?
Isn't that the even the walking closer to where the cars are in the road?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that an entailment of that very thing? Is he's willing to essentially put his life at risk to the point of death to protect you?
That's a valid question. I see your point of view, but I think at the end of the day, I would want to be with someone who would, if I said no to them and then I explained why, they would be understanding.
So you want to have the conversation. Like you want to have a conversation with the guy.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to explain to him why, despite him being traditional and old school, why he needs to accept your modernity.
Yes, of
Okay,
course.
cool. So what if he wants to start having conversations with you about his traditional gender expectations? For example, babe, I want to have a conversation about who's going to pay. And
Yes.
it sounds like you're okay with that one. So, but he wants to have a conversation of, I'd actually prefer if you walked closer to the road so that you could conceivably get run over by a car.
Because he's modern.
Instead of me. He's a modern guy.
I would not.
You wouldn't like
No.
that. Okay.
I wouldn't.
Okay. And,
So you want an Italian hot mess that doesn't want you to take his last name, but is traditional in all the ways that you want. Okay.
So what does the traditional old school guy get?
What do you mean get?
Well, so if we're going to lay out some of the
You
things
get access
that,
to a pop star.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Rising,
there you go.
right? Access to a rising pop star is what.
So if we lay out the things that you want, so you want a old school traditional guy, so the entailment there is going to be protecting and providing you. I think being willing to and potentially dying for somebody, that
what
seems
do
like
they
a
get in
pretty...
return, is what you're saying?
What's
like,
that?
What do they get in return?
Yeah, what do they get that specifically you would be bringing?
Okay. I provide, I guess, the term submission. Like, I do love to be feminine. I do love to take care of people.
Okay, nurturing, sure.
Yeah, nurturing. I would say I love to cook. I'm a cooker. So,
Cooking,
yeah, I would
cleaning.
prise that. Being able to
So if
organize.
he told you to make a sandwich, you would do it?
Oh, that's so rude. Like in a rude way. Like, you
No,
know?
it was the most polite, charitable way one
So I
could
feel like
say,
people,
make a sandwich.
men who are like against feminism would always say like,
Are
go
you-
make me
are
a
you
sandwich in the
feminist?
kitchen. Yes, I would say so.
Okay. And,
I would cook for the man, but if he's like immediately going into the relationship expecting me to cook for him,
Yeah, he
and
expected
being
it.
like, well, you have to build trust. You can't just come into a relationship.
Wait. Build trust. On the first date, he's supposed to risk his life walking you on the sidewalk.
He doesn't have to risk his life. It's nice if he would.
It's nice if you made a sandwich.
nice if you die.
Well, if he's saying to me, "Hey, go in the kitchen and make me a sandwich," that's like rude. I feel like that's what men
Okay,
say.
what if he was like,
I think it's rude that he has to ask.
I
What-
mean,
Why?
in this exchange, right, like, it would be rude if she said, walk on the sidewalk side for me, right? Like, everyone would agree, like, damn, that's, like, fucking bitchy, right? I think we would all agree that would be, like, a pretty bitch
Right,
move.
well-
It'd also be really socially weird on a first date.
I don't
to be
know,
like,
actually.
Go make me a sandwich.
Actually-
I'd be like, you have no social skills. I don't know about this
I
one,
actually
Chief.
disagree with that. I think if a man was like not aware of it and the woman was like, "What are you doing? Like, protect me." Like, I think a man would actually be responsive to that.
Yeah, maybe, but in general, I think
mean-
men are a lot better at rolling with, like, criticism than women often
yeah,
are.
I'll engage with that. So, I mean, okay, so you're saying the guy should just do it. Okay, so the woman should
I don't,
just make
to
the
be clear.
sandwich.
Just to be clear, I don't give a
We
fuck.
shouldn't have
about
to
men
tell her
walking
to
on
make the
side.
sandwich. She should just preemptively know to make the sandwich.
Well, here's where I would argue with the feminists.
She's nodding.
Here's where I'd argue with the feminist
You're in
side.
favor of the sandwich making.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I would say if you have certain like traditional chivalrous expectations that would be an immediate ick if like not foreseen, and you don't give any grace in between,
Mm-hmm.
but you expect high levels of grace in return, you're creating a very losing situation for all men, which is shitty to do. It's a shitty thing to do. However, if you have mutual grace and discuss these things, so for example, there's lots of things that my husband will ask me to do all the time, and I'm happy to do it, right? He might just be like sitting down watching TV and be like, hey, can you go get me a drink? Yeah, of course I can, right?
Mm-hmm.
But part of the exchange is that when he's up, I can also ask him to do the same. But that's something that we've also
Did
spoken
you take
about.
his last name?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to point out that even the way in which we're discussing this is in a very particular way. It's purely individualistic. Whereas if we're really talking about tradition, it used to be the case that women and men were actually raised that this is just what you do. So you actually just do this sandwich making, and you actually want to do it, right? Because it's part of a larger structure that's more valuable than your own individual preferences. Even as we discuss this, it's like, well, what's the contract? I think the important thing is to sit down and make a contract. And this is all modernity playing out. When we're talking about traditionalism, it's kind of a joke to ask anyone, no offense, but asking you about traditionalism, you're just like, you're taking it like it's like you're at a salad bar and you're like, here's some cucumbers. And what the traditional perspective is that the tradition is the entire room. It's not just salad. It's not the salad bar. And you're
But the
able to
room's
pick.
changed. I think the issue that we have with modernity dating is that the room is changed, right? The problem with the banquet table is that now for the man to even be able to go to the table, this is going to break down immediately. I'll just say this. In the past, men could just work and make enough money for both of them and run the household. for most
But then
men,
feminism happened.
well,
And
no,
then all the women went into the work and then lowered the dollar.
War happened, and but if we didn't have women go into the workplace, our GDP would have never competed,
poor
and if we didn't
GDP.
shift
It's
away
only
from the
thing that
gold
matters.
backing,
It's the
we
Only
would
thing
have.
that matters, the GDP.
The GDP is so fundamental for everything when it comes to a nation state, because if you don't have a competitive GDP,
And you
your
have
enemies
no-
are able to stomp you.
What is your
That's super
nation if
important.
it's not bound in something bigger than the GDP?
But it's usually bound in some level of civic nationality, which is going to be the bigger thing. But
You mean duties?
no, more like patriotism, love for country, not duties.
Yeah, but what's the identity of the country? GDP up?
No, it's American.
Why
Like,
don't we
being
swap
I'm an American.
Why don't we swap the flag with GDP up? With the thumbs up
I know
sign.
that you think this is good because it's one of your memes, but it's nobody thinks this. GDP is important, if you don't understand, for being able to be competitive with your enemies so that they don't destroy you. When it comes to a relationship and what we're talking about, we have this issue where the economy is so different now that men can't bring to the table sole providership by and large. Some can, and those ones I think do get to make different concessions and negotiations on the relationship. But by and large, men have to say, I need you to come to the table for economic income too. And that necessarily means that women get to have more negotiation power for what the relationship looks like and what they want in return. And the problem with a lot of modern men in dating is that all they feel like they can bring is money, because unfortunately our society has attached a male's value to their dollar, their wallet, which I think is a tragedy. And I think it's bad when women do that to men, and I think it's bad when
That's not
men do
new.
that
But
to
you
men.
just said the GDP is the key thing.
Yeah, GDP is really important, but that doesn't
But
mean
then,
that
but then it's
value,
a tragedy that men's wallet matters.
It's
so
a
much
contradiction.
in a relationship.
It's not a contradiction at all to say that
It's
at
just
a
that your
nation
view's not
state
very
level,
thought out
GDP
is
is
the problem.
important to be competitive and not get destroyed by your enemies. But at an individual
Why
level,
is it sad?
it's a tragedy,
Why is it a tragedy
that
at the
men's
individu-
only value in a relationship is the dollars that they
look,
bring.
let me make it clear.
But it should be more value the character that they have.
It's your value
Kyla.
scale is arbitrary. Is the
It's
point.
not arbitrary.
It's also
is.
it's
not
worse.
arbitrary.
It's actually pretty bad. Is that at the individual level it's a tragedy, but at the nation level it's the ultimate value.
Yes.
It's
Your
not the
scale is
ultimate
arbitrary.
value.
You just
and when
said-
you argued it
No.
with me, you said it was subjective and relative, and what you believe is right. And
Relative
arbitrary.
doesn't mean arbitrary. These are not the same thing.
It
These are
me-
not the same
If you
words.
argue that it's
can
relative
be
and then you
coherently
make an
attached to.
argument, it's arbitrary.
That's not true at all.
It is. It is.
No.
You don't know basic philosophy.
Okay,
this
we can
was
go
our
back
2-hour
to this.
debate.
Presuppositionalism is
That has nothing to do
okay,
with
if you wanna
whether
go back there,
relativism is a
we can answer the
contradiction.
question
It has nothing
before.
to do
I'm
with
sorry,
that.
I'm so tired.
You don't understand the
Presuppositionalism
topics.
doesn't solve
You
Agrippa's
don't know
dilemma
anything
any
about
better
these
than
topics.
foundationalism.
You've never had a philosophy class to even speak on these topics.
I know you're saying this.
No, but you
at this
demonstrated
point,
that you
after
can't.
watching your debate, I don't think you have a degree in philosophy,
You
because
don't
you would
debate.
know that presuppositionalism
Relativism is
does not solve
subjectivism.
Agrippa's dilemma.
That's
It relies on
irrelevant to
dogmatism.
my position.
Unfortunately,
You don't
you offered
understand the terms that you
coherentism as
use.
the solution to Agrippa's trilemma,
Right,
but you
which is-
know, or you're not educated in it, you know that Agrippa's trilemma is not solved by presuppositionalism. It's not solved by
It
anything.
is solved.
It is not.
because it's a
Coherentism
specific
does not solve
system.
dogmatism.
You don't even know. You didn't know what coherentism
You
was
don't-
until yesterday. You just
That's
learned
fine.
it yesterday.
I don't have to know every single philosophical
If you're
word
gonna
to
come
be
to
able
a
to
debate,
engage.
yeah, you should know
then
it
you
the day
should probably
before,
know what
right?
equivocating means when you
Which
cited
you
it
didn't,
incorrectly.
because you used feminism two different ways?
You cited it incorrectly. You said that it's
No,
making two
it's-
things the same.
no, it's
when
not.
you use the
It's
same
using the
word,
word
in a
in
different
different
way.
ways.
Then why did you cite it incorrectly
I
against
clipped
me?
you lying,
used
dummy,
tu quo
yesterday.
pro
I
to
clipped
try
you
to claim
lying
something against
yesterday.
me, but it's an ad hominem from hypocrisy,
I
which you
clipped
cited
you lying
incorrectly too.
yesterday.
When I was looking for
You got clipped
confirmation
lying.
bias, you
100,000
cited
people saw
Gambler's
you lie
dilemma.
yesterday.
Gambler's
My
dilemma has
clips?
nothing to do with confirmation bias. It wasn't what I was looking for. Gambler's dilemma
You
has
mean when I
everything to do
literally
from using
cited-
past post
when
hoc
I cited
information
your
to make
example?
predictions of the future,
When
which
I
has
cited
nothing to
your
do with
example?
confirmation bias. So
I
what you
gave
do
you a
in
very
debates
example, you
is
idiot.
you cite a bunch of
The very thing you
philosophically
said was
sounding
what I
words
said.
to feel impressive.
You're
and
not talking to
unfortunately,
anybody but
you
yourself.
don't know
You're talking
what
to
you're
the
talking about,
hamster
and
that's
you
running in
rely
your
on
head on a wheel in your
presuppositionalism
head. There's
to
a hamster
stump
going.
people who don't have
There's a hamster
philosophical
going,
systems in the
and it's
background.
spitting
But
the
you
little
still,
doo-doo balls out of your
to
mouth
this day,
like a hamster
haven't
will.
solved Agrippa's trilemma, and you're stuck.
You don't even
and
know
you
what
know
that
it.
is. It has to do with epistemology. I asked you what epistemology was. You didn't even know.
I said
I
Agrippa's-
said, what's justified true belief? Oh, tell me. You don't
Agrippa's
know anything
trilemma,
about these
I can define it
topics.
for you. It's infinite regression.
I know
it's
that's not
dogmatism,
anything
and it's
to do
circular
with what we're
reasoning.
debating.
It has everything to do with it because
I
you're
don't
saying
believe
that
in
relativism is
foundationalism.
arbitrary, but relativism
It
has
is.
never been viewed as arbitrary ever. It's a
It
philosophical
wouldn't matter if
system
everybody.
based out of
That's an appeal to
foundationalism.
authority, you idiot.
It's not
The
appeal
fact
to
that
authority
everybody-
at all in
If the
any
fact
way,
that
shape, or
nobody
form.
believed that is an appeal to authority because
Moral
it's a vox
relativism
populi.
is a
That's an appeal to
foundationalism
the,
belief.
It's appeal to the masses,
the reason
you idiot.
why it's not solving Agrippa's trilemma is the same reason
You don't even
presuppositionalism doesn't solve
understand
Agrippa's trilemma.
You don't understand
I
infinite
do
regress.
all the time.
You don't know what
it's the idea
foundationalism
that you
is.
fundamentally
I
cannot
asked
justify
you
any
what-
axiom
I
at
asked
the end
you
of the
what
day because
justified
that
true
everything
belief
must be
is.
circular,
That
including
doesn't mean you understand it.
presuppositionalism.
You're repeating what you read already, you
Presuppositionalism
idiot.
tries to solve Agrippa's trilemma by
repeating memes that you
presupposing
read.
something,
You're
but it
repeating
relies on
memes that you read.
dogmatism.
This only fools idiots who follow destiny when
That-
you just yap because you think you're destiny
Take a bet
and
on
you're
the
garbage
IQ average
destiny.
between
You're
Destiny's
garbage
audience
destiny.
and your audience. Take
Are
a
you
bet on
serious?
it. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
The garbage person that you tried
I
to,
would
you
bet
tried to
that the
dissociate yourself
education
with?
level between my audience and yours
Wait,
is vastly
your
disparate.
education-
Yeah, it maps onto IQ pretty well.
Oh, really?
Yep, it does.
What, like in the Canadian system that you were educated in?
The significantly
That
better
you didn't know what
education system
justified
in
your belief?
America.
Says who?
ain't got the answers, man. You
Says
ain't
who?
got the answers.
Aren't you guys trying to like
global
destroy the Department of
standards.
You ain't
Education?
got the answers, Sway.
What?
Aren't you guys trying to destroy the Department of Education? So obviously the system sucks. If the system was working, then you wouldn't want to destroy it.
I ain't drinking up.
I don't believe the state
fuck you saying
education
to me, you
system is
little
good,
shit?
no.
I wanted to ask you, Kyla.
How are you not in fucking school?
What's the
Well, no, one second. Brian's
Kiss
got to
your
get through
mother
his
with that
sounds.
mouth?
Oh, he hit all of them.
It's called you kiss your mother with that fucking mouth? Huh?
What's the meaningful?
Wait, I'm sorry, this is so distracting.
Because the fucking youth of society. You shut up when I'm talking to you! You shut your mouth!
Is it stuck?
Yeah, it's done.
That was so long.
What's the
Sorry.
meaningful symmetry breaker between the tragedy of a man, his whole value being essentially the GDP of the house, and the country having that it's a good thing, it's not a tragedy that the GDP of the country is good. That's a good thing, but at the house level, which is a small country,
Yeah.
it's a tragedy. What's a symmetry breaker that makes one
An
good and one
ecological
tragedy?
fallacy, right? What's good
What?
at like?
What are you saying?
You don't know what an ecological fallacy
Look,
is?
I asked you the symmetry breaker. You
Yeah, yeah.
saying
I'm
fallacy.
No, I'm answering with ecological fallacy. If you don't know what it is, that's okay. I can explain it to you.
Oh, you're so condescending.
I'm
Just
I'm
answer the
being
question.
Genuine. You don't have to know all words. I actually don't think it's bad if you don't know what it is. But my answer to your question is ecological fallacy. If you want me to explain ecological fallacy, I'm willing to do so.
Cool. Can you do that after you answer my question?
My answer to your question is an ecological fallacy.
So you can't answer
She
it.
can't answer
So you won't answer it because it's.
You
the
don't know
question-
what that word means, do
Is
you?
a question a fallacy? How's a question a fallacy?
And so the question is an ecological fallacy. Yes, questions can be fallacious.
So asking for a symmetry breaker, I want to know the meaningful distinction between
The
something
symmetry
being
breaker is
good-
found in the ecological fallacy. Again, I can define it for you, or you can define it here. But if you want the answer,
Agrippa's
Trilemma.
What is that? What is Agrippa's?
It's something that she heard Destiny talk about that she
Never heard
repeats
Destiny talk about
and
it.
has nothing to do with the thing that we're debating. But it's a way for her to deflect away when she gets cornered, and she does it in multiple debates. She did it in their first debate too.
Okay.
But it doesn't fool anybody else in the audience.
Do you wanna
That's
answer
why
his
you
question?
can't tell me what subjectivism and relativism are and how your position justifies.
I can
itself.
answer both of those things. You're
go.
the one who thought absolutism
How
and objectivism are the same thing when they're not
The
synonymous.
words can mean the same thing in the
They
context.
don't mean
you
the
idiot.
same thing in
You're so
philosophy at
stupid.
all.
Yes, they do. This
Do you
is
want to
so
answer
dumb.
his question on Agrippa's trilemma?
Tell me how your position
I
is
don't think so.
true if it's arbitrary and if it's
It's
subjective.
not arbitrary.
How is subjectivism not arbitrary?
I don't use subjectivism. You
It's-
were talking about relativism.
is the same thing.
No, it's
yes,
not.
it is.
No, it's
You're
not.
so stupid. It's the same thing.
Okay, do you want me to
Tell me
define
how
it
it's
for you?
different.
Relativism is looking at the scale at like a group of things and finding things relative to certain points. So, for example, relativism would answer the simple philosophical question: if a man steals bread, is it bad? Relativism would go, why is he stealing bread? If you find out that he's in like a super tyrannical country and he can't feed his children, most people
It's
would
called
agree.
moral relativism.
There you go.
And it's purely
Moral
what?
subjectivism would say, what I like to do is what is right. It is fully centered on I and the individual. Relativism looks at like the outer situation and
If
like
I
saying
say, if I say,
utilitarianism is a
listen,
great example
this
of
is so
relativism.
silly. This
It's
is
not
grammar. You don't
subjectivism.
understand grammar. If I say I'm a moral relativist, That's a subjectivist position.
It's not. I'll
You're
draw
so
it for
stupid.
you. Here, I can draw it for you so you
I
guys
said
understand.
I am.
She's gonna-
So,
you understand grammar?
For those of you who are not familiar with philosophy, I guess I'll explain it to the ladies.
Listen to me. You're
there's
talking
an
to the ceiling.
X-axis and there's a Y-axis.
If I say
on the
I-
X-axis would be absolutism.
If
and
I
that
say
would be
I am a,
relativism.
this is like talking to, she doesn't talk.
So absolutism is like, do you guys know Kant? You guys ever heard of Kant?
Hey, don't call people that.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
That's
So
so rude.
Kant had this idea of absolutism, which is that when we come to universal laws, we should apply them to everyone equally in all ways. And the problem with absolutism is that it falls apart really quickly. And the only law that he could find that worked really well
That's
for
not
absolutism in its
composition.
old
That's a-
way
no, that's
is that
wrong.
Kant's a
nobody should lie.
That's a
deontologist.
threshold.
Kant's a
Because he would-
deontologist. It's not what you're talking about.
Deontology can be absolutist. So when we're looking at the spectrum of absolutism to relativism, relativism would say stealing is bad, but it kind of depends on the situation
if
that's
I said
happening.
I'm
so that's
a
how we
moral
gauge it.
relativist-
So an example of relativism
Hey,
would be
I'm
like
talking to you.
utilitarianism.
If I say I'm a moral relativist, is that my subjective state?
Your statement.
Is it my subjective state? I am a moral relativist.
I don't even know what you're trying to ask here.
It's a simple question.
Well, the issue is that you're equivocating.
I am a
again.
moral relativist.
You're equivocating because
No,
you're using
I'm
the
not.
word
You don't know
subjective,
what
and in the next question you're going to use subjective for a different purpose.
You're so stupid
So
that you
subjective
think
could
that a
mean
word-
in this
do you know what a-
situation
do you know what a
your
word
personal
concept fallacy
state.
is?
But then when I answer that question, what you'll do is you'll see subjectivism is a moral system, but this is very different from one another.
No,
Do you want to
the
go into
basis-
objectivism versus
no, the
subjectivism? Because we can
basis
do
of
that next.
subjectivism is
Objectivism is like
relative.
Platonic forms. Have you guys ever heard of Plato? Okay, Plato had this idea that essentially there was ideas that were true. So if we talk about
This
justice,
is like blippy philosophy.
you guys need it too, apparently. So when we talk about like justice,
Is that
Plato,
subjective or
do you want to
objective?
interrupt me or do you want
Is
to
that
keep
what
going?
you're saying right now? Is that subjective or objective?
Plato's Platonic
Yeah, yeah.
forms.
No, your account
He
of
used
it.
objectivism for his Platonic
No, what you're
forms.
saying
your
is it
account
true?
subjective?
Is your account of Plato, is it subjective or objective?
Again, you're just doing an equivocation.
You
This
can't
isn't
answer
like
the
a crazy
question.
That's not
gotcha.
equivocation.
There's no answer to your
That's
question.
not an
'cause All you're doing
equivocation.
is being bad faith.
If
You're
I say-
pretending to ask
do you want
me
me
a
to fix
question
it
that's
for you?
looking to adhere to actual
Listen,
response.
I
But what you're actually doing is to
subjectively-
equivocate the
So
word
she's not gonna
afterwards so you
answer
can
any
trick me.
questions.
Do you want me to finish going through
No,
the y-axis?
No,
You don't know
Or
what
do we
you're
want to
talking
answer
about.
his question on
Nobody
Agrippa's
wants you to keep
trilemma?
talking. Nobody.
Interesting.
Nobody. Here,
Interesting.
let-
Philosophy King's over here. by the
Nobody
way.
wants you to keep talking.
We'll come right back to the conversation, but there's a bunch of chats that we have to get to. We've kind of been stalling on them. So Alpha Pig, thank you. Coming.
Alpha Pig donated $200.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Society has lost the
Appreciate
entire
it.
point of humanity,
Oh, Ogle
which
with
is
the big
procreation
gifted.
and advancing itself. Ladies, do you disagree with that statement? If so, what is the point of humanity?
It's a good question. It's subjective.
You guys wanna answer it?
No, the answer would be subjective.
I agree.
They all agree. They totally understand the message that just okay. All right, yo Ogle, thank you for the gifted 50 memberships on YouTube. Thank you so much, man. We also have a TTS coming in from Ogle. Let's see. Wait. Society has lost the entire point of humanity, which is procreation advancing itself. Ladies, do you... Here, I'm gonna get the rest of them to answer that one, though.
Ogle_glue.net donated $200. Sorry dude, but relativism is not subjectivism per se. A mouse is very small relative to an elephant, but
Thanks,
large
Ogle.
I said I am a relativist. If I say I am a relativist, and that's my subjective state, could you name one Kant book? Can you name one book by Kant?
Can you define
name one
Agrippa's
book by
trilemma
Kant?
yet?
Can
Or are you
you
going to
name
keep running away from
You're a
that?
Kantian.
I'm not a Kantian,
Okay,
no.
can you name one book by Kant?
Don't need to.
So you don't know anything about Kant. You've never
You
read
don't
Kant.
know a
Can
book. You don't know nothing.
Can you
Define
name a
Agrippa's
single
trilemma.
book by Kant?
Not off the top of my head.
Because you
no.
haven't read Kant.
You don't know
So you're
things.
so-
You
why is she
don't
acting
read
like a
book.
retard?
I've read 3 books by Kant. I don't remember the names of them.
You haven't read 3 books by
I
Kant. You
haven't
can't
taken
name one of
multiple
them.
philosophy
Name one of them. Name one of them.
I don't need to. Citing books
Because
is
you
a
haven't.
proof
Because
of
you
knowledge.
lied.
Citing books
You
is
haven't
not
read
proof of
Kant.
knowledge.
Don't you think people who study at a graduate level can pick out when somebody thinks they know a topic,
Don't you
and then
think
they start
somebody who
talking
studies
about
philosophy
it,
at apparently
and then
a
they
master's
don't
level
know a
could
single